we actually design our pavements to fail. Why? Why would we do that?
Because at some point you got to rip it up, right?
Yeah. The initial cost to build a road, that cost we mathematically equate to the most bang for the buck. Us as designers, we actually compare as what's the best for the taxpayer. So we do this whole engineer economics for it, but it's designed to fail. So those of us on the road going, why is this road so horrible? Because it's doing what it was designed to do. It's just at the end of its life.
Welcome to the Level Design Podcast, a podcast for architects and engineers who want to thrive in this industry by creating more freedom, fulfillment, and financial security. Join us in uncovering how to restore value and honor to the unique people who choose to be designers and caretakers of our built world, and why it's essential to the future of our society, our industry, and our planet.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Miles. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
Where are you today? Hermosa Beach?
I'm back home. I'm back home for now.
Yeah.
Yep. Enjoying my routine again. It's nice.
What's the background with the name Hermosa? You know? You've been living there.
I actually don't. I need to do some research. But it's factual. It's very beautiful here.
Yep. Very beautiful. And lots of people with that walkway along the beach. What do you think of that design where you got the beach, 12 feet of pedestrian, and then boom, you got all these properties?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's some of the most beautiful real estate in the country, prime real estate. So you're going to get some congestion. You know, you've got some of the houses are 5 feet from each other.
Right.
And they're all, a lot of them in certain areas are, you know, multiple millions, mansions.
Yeah. And it looks like that infrastructure is built for a party.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Just entertainment. The whole thing.
It's very open, inviting. It's kind of a bustling energy a lot of times because the Strand is it's wide. Obviously, tons of people are out there on the beach, volleyball. It's a very vibrant energy that is still new to me. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah, but very affluent, right? So very affluent properties, and I guess a lot of humanity, people are able to visit, right, and enjoy it.
Right.
It's open public. Also interesting that it's open to the public and everybody can use it.
Yep.
It could have been private. You could have had private property go right in the ocean and nobody else could use it, right?
That's true. I mean, they have these really nice, 6 or 7 stall bathroom setups, like every half mile, it seems like.
Yep. So that's
public.
Very public. And so one would actually step back, and it's very interesting to me, is you can be along the coastline in different parts of the country and those beaches are private. You can't do it. But most of them are in the United States. And it's what causes that is governance. It's our government reserving the rights for the entire population to access pretty places. It's like the national park system. It's our beaches. It's often our rivers, waterways. We complain about a lot of things, but wow, isn't that cool that our governance of ourselves reserve these special places? It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. I've never thought about that till now. Like if that was private, that would be a completely different ecosystem down here.
Yep.
Of people. I mean, it just wouldn't be the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful. That it's public because it's a pretty cool beach.
Yep. Well, this is a good segue into the past conversation. What year were we on in our history?
We're in the 1690s.
1690s.
Yeah.
So 1690s, we've got oxen carts, still using the indigenous Native American Indian pathways that they established for thousands of years. So their trade routes, they're passed through the European are still using those paths, right? But they're bringing carts now, and they're starting to bring riverboats. So they're starting to use these rivers in this period of time. Also, though, we're starting to see that first governance general public services idea is starting to take root in America. Is, oh, we can't work as individuals anymore. We got bigger problems. We need to govern ourselves for general services, public services. So this starts the time where we start creating government for basic services.
Right.
Interesting time, because this sets the groundwork right here, sets the governance that we start to test to accomplish basic services that we all share. Roadways, our first water main in Boston, wood water mains being used for fire protection in Boston. So
explain that.
A wooden water main was often our first material for a long time, thousands of years, but now it's starting to be used in the US, and it's first used in Boston, mainly to get water for fire, because all of our buildings are wood at this time. And a lot of buildings are burning down. And so, well, you imagine a cart with a tank of water, with a hand pump or buckets at this point, you can't get that fire out. So the community of Boston funds a wooden water main to get source water closer to the fire.
Wow. So a wooden water main, like a pipe that delivers it directly to, certain areas. Mm-hmm. Like today, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm green on this topic because, today we have fire hydrants. Mm-hmm. Is this kind of like the early version of that?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. But it's wooden.
Wooden water mains are hollowed out trees, and then they're tarred, and then they're strapped with iron. There's a strap of iron, and then they have a tarred joint so that every section is tarred together.
That is pretty cool.
Pretty cool
version of that.
Yeah. And a lot of these wooden water mains were still being in service to the mid-century, 40s and 50s in America. You still find these wooden water mains. Really started getting popular in the 1800s, wood water mains.
And, you're not getting metals and toxins from certain materials that they used more recently because it's wood. So that's interesting. It probably doesn't last nearly as long, though.
No, right. And it can't handle the pressure, right? We started going into pressure systems, but yeah. And then our first asphalt is used in this country on streets. And all of these things now, if you really look at it, you're like, wait a minute, this is the groundwork for shared streets, shared funding, shared utilities. This is the beginning of the thinking that we still hold today. We still hold them today, this shared idea. Wow. You literally, I often get into different projects about how we don't share in America things. Mm-hmm. And it's not possible to share, to get the Americans to share. And I go, wait a minute. This is not true. So if I go visit you and I turn on the tap water, the taxpayers there are sharing the water that they paid for, and I'm not paying for it.
Yeah.
The road I used to go visit you, I probably went through 1,000 different ownerships.
Yeah.
Tax districts, HOAs, private, public, highways, fed, state, county, city, even private roads to go visit you. And nobody stopped me at every jurisdiction or every ownership said, give me 25 cents, give me $1.
Right.
That's a big shared thing we are all up to.
We do a lot of subconscious sharing.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it.
It's super interesting. And that philosophy begins here in the 1600s.
All the way back then. Damn.
Yep. And your Hermosa Beach enjoyment of that public space, that public sidewalk, that public bathrooms, all begin with the philosophy started in that late 1600s.
Interesting.
Super cool.
Yeah. Cool. So, Scott, today you actually asked me a question the other day,
Uh-huh.
and you said, how do I know how roads are made? And I mean, not really. I know that there's asphalt involved and, tar and some sort of gravel. And I've seen them, paving roads or repaving or fixing cracks in roads. I've seen concrete roads, bridges
Yep.
as a citizen, but I don't really know how those come to be and why they're built how they are and how they're maintained.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
you
why I
could
asked the
enlighten me.
question. I often wonder how much does the general public that aren't in the industry for one aspect or another. You're not a road contractor, you're not a designer, you're not a public official that's responsible for these road systems. You're not in that world. How much do you know as a public?
Yeah.
That's why I asked the question. I'm just kind of curious. How much does the general public know?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, break it down. Like, what's the thought process behind roads to begin with when you design them?
Great question. So roads, like all of the built world, is resourced from the planet. Think about that. That's a big question mark. We feel often so entitled that these things are actually just are. Asphalt and concrete just are available. No, they're actually resourced from our planet. And one would say most of the roads in this country are actually gravel. What? I mean, think about that. Most of the roads in this country are actually rural gravel roads.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Dang.
And then if you think about it, you're like, okay, well, as population grows, you get over 200, 500 vehicles per day. The gravel moves too much. So the science is actually interesting. I forgot the numbers. I'm going to say it's a vehicle traveling down a gravel road moves a ton of gravel a mile.
Wow. Yeah.
So the tires actually move a ton of gravel per mile, I think. But I think that's right.
Yeah.
So if you get over 200 cars or 500 cars a day, it pushes the gravel around and the road falls apart because all the vehicles are moving that gravel around. And it becomes, you can't maintain it affordably anymore. So as the population grows, we started getting better at, hey, let's quarry local aggregates out of the ground and let's crush it and screen it so that there's fine particles, there's a little bit larger particles, gravel, there's larger, there's 3/4 inch, there's 1.5 inch. And let's study if we mix those in certain proportions. You know what? 5% more of the 3/8 aggregate actually performs better. We've gone through these sciences for 100 years. For 100 years, we've been playing with these aggregates. We pull out of the ground, we put it through a crusher, and we play with these gradations, these percentages of sand and silt. And so it's been a bunch of engineering. And and that's most of the roads in the United States, and it's quarried locally. The best aggregates might be in the Rocky Mountains with hard granite, but you can't afford to ship it to Chicago. So the taxpayer can't afford to ship the best aggregates in the Rocky Mountains to Chicago.
Right.
So what do? If you're building something in Chicago, you got a quarry in Chicago.
Right.
Because of the trucking costs.
Local.
Well, wait a minute. That aggregate's not as good, maybe. Or Texas, mainly soft limestone. Well, now you got a problem because the performance of the aggregate in Texas is different than the performance of aggregate in the Rocky Mountains. So now we get into engineering, civil engineering, where the local designers are looking at those local aggregates and playing with each local quarry's gradation that performs the best for a road. So engineering in the Rocky Mountains for asphalt or concrete is not the same as Texas or Missouri or Alabama or Florida or New Hampshire or California.
Never thought about that. Yeah, I've never thought about all the materials needed and the fact that we've been perfecting the formula over tons of years, many years, and how I would love to see kind of where most of the materials come from in the US. Like, are there kind of pockets of areas that we rely on? We have to do some transportation. Like, what are all the materials that go into the average asphalt road? And then where do all those come from? I'd almost love to see like a map, right?
Yeah. It's actually not far. So even today in our modern design, a government will put something out to bid for a road construction, and the contractor in the contract's required to submit which quarry they're using and which gradation they're using, and they have to prove that it's a certified quarry, certified by the states, usually, that their quarry's up to standards. And then they have to do a bunch of testing to prove that their quarry and the mix of asphalts meets the standard in the spec.
Right.
And it's very local. It's very local because it's competitive. So we do competitive bidding. So the contractors are always searching for the closest quarry. So they truck less so they can be more competitive in the bid. That's how our roads are built. And it's even more fascinating. Go back to that gravel road, and the growth of humanity causes more than 200 or 500 vehicles, and you can't maintain that gravel anymore because the wheels are pushing it around. We go, what do we do now? What do we do now? So you start seeing in the 40s and 50s, and even in the 30s in urban areas, you see this progression of gravel doesn't work in the cities anymore. So in the 1800s, you start seeing asphalt and the first concrete pavement. What is that? What is asphalt and concrete doing? It's gluing those aggregates together to make them stronger. Yeah. That's all it's doing. It's this glue.
Looking for a new opportunity? Interested in being part of an expanding network of independent engineers and architects who are thinking differently? Level Design Partners is on a mission to create prosperity for design professionals, the industry, and the world, using innovative business systems and a culture of collaboration. We believe that traditional education and firm structures want you to be a cog in their machine, depriving you of key skills needed to thrive, thus commoditizing an entire industry in the process. Gain access to skills, tools, and systems by partnering with Level Design Partners. Learn more at leveldesignpartners.com.
Yeah.
Glue is all it is. Right?
Crushed rock, gravel, sand, or recycled materials such as crushed concrete or asphalt pavement. And then you've got asphalt binder. You've got fillers and additives, subgrade and base layers. But yeah, it's putting that all together in one and gluing it together, like you said. I guess that leads to the longest road before it starts to fall apart.
Mm-hmm. And you'll go to your DOTs, your Department of Transportations by state. They're usually the standard setters. And if you go into those, you'll see a material science section at your Department of Transportation. And they're engineers and scientists optimizing the aggregate resources and the asphalt mixtures and asphalt types, concrete mixes. And every year, they're constantly testing and trying to improve the performance of their science. And when they feel good, they publish it in state standard specifications. And most every jurisdiction kind of adopts it, saying, yeah, that's the right pavement mix that I want to put in my bid. Tons of science going into this. And continuous. It doesn't stop. They're always looking to improve. for the taxpayer's benefit of cost, right?
Yeah.
So here's another variable is we actually design our pavements to fail. Why? Why would we do that?
I would assume it's more affordable that way than having them maybe more slowly fall apart and having to repair. Because at some point you got to rip it up, right?
Yeah. So we actually, exactly that thinking is the initial cost to build a road, that cost, and we mathematically equate to the most bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
So you may say a concrete pavement costs a lot more and we'll get 50 years of use. Or we'll get an asphalt pavement design that's cheaper, it lasts 20 years. And us as designers, we actually compare as what's the best for the taxpayer. So we do this whole engineer economics for it. But it's designed to fail. So those of us on the road going, why is this road so horrible? Because it's doing what it was designed to do. It's just at the end of its life.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at driving from now on. Instead of being like, oh my God, this freaking road, no one cares about this road, they got to get on this. You can say, oh, well, this is just part of the process.
Part of the process. This is an old person I'm driving on. It's almost done. Right. Yeah.
For timeline, what is I have no clue. Like, how long does a road last? How do you even think about that?
Yeah. Well, there's a variable. There's a important part of the equation that we haven't talked about yet. Important biggest variable is the amount of load on the road. Mm-hmm. So we break it up into what we call equivalent single axle load. An equivalent single axle load is usually done by counts of existing traffic, and we actually do forward planning consistent with our city plans and our growth that's happening in the area. So we actually go back to our planning documents, our city planners, and the projected population growth or the projected routes of trucks. Trucks are our biggest loads and the toughest on our roadway systems. But we're actually creating a structure that supports 18,000 pounds, for instance, on a tire. That roadway has to support that. And you've got local roads that might be 500 vehicles a day. Mm-hmm. You might have an arterial that starts getting up to 15,000 vehicles a day, 20,000 vehicles a day. That's 20,000 single axle loads that road has to carry. You might get into an interstate where you're up to 80 to 100,000 loads a day. Yeah. And that pavement, that equation, we go, okay, I want this road to last for 20 years, and there's going to be 5% growth every year of traffic. So the width of the road, the number of lanes, the pavement, we engineer all that. And we look for the most affordable pavement design. Could be concrete, could be asphalt. But that's a lot of speculation. How much traffic's going to be on this road 20 years from now, 50 years from now?
Right.
That's a lot of speculation, right?
Wow. And what is your experience with this? So you're talking about it you're knowledgeable about this subject. I mean, you're a civil engineer. What's your experience with roads?
Was responsible for maintaining, many thousands of roads. And it's super complex. As a staffer in the government, you make a lot of decisions, but you look at your budgets and you go, look, I only got so much money. Do I spend more on maintaining what I have or doing a real nice brand new road improvement?
Right.
And so your staff and your governance are always looking at this. And we've gotten really good at this. Really, really good at this. We've employed pavement management systems in the last 3 decades where we're actually going out, sometimes annually, and actually looking at the pavement, see how it's doing. And then we do 5-year capital improvement plans. And one road may be performing better than we thought. And our software and our testing that we do annually goes into a computer software. And the computer software will optimize our money and help us make decisions. So it's a pavement management system. And so our larger municipalities have just these brilliant software systems. Our smaller cities don't. You just kind of have a staffer, just driving around every year going, how are my roads doing? Where should I put my money? But you go to your governance and go, look, it looks like, this is what I want to do with the money. And the staffer says, based on all my annual investigation, and this is my suggestion, and maybe there's more money needed. Usually that's the case, but you don't get the money. So you go back and go, well, this is my money. And we're slowly not having enough money. So slowly we're inching towards poor road conditions. And to maintain a poor road costs more than maintain a good road condition. But the point, I guess, is it's just a huge struggle maintaining the citizen's asset because we're not getting enough capital. The important thing here is it's not willy-nilly. It's not that you don't have great minds working on it. You do. You have great systems, great engineering, and it's real. It's real. These are real things. And so when you're driving down the road and you're going, oh, this road sucks. What's going on with my taxes? Just know that there's a whole bunch of scientists. There's a whole bunch of staffs that are smart that actually know exactly what's going on with this road.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Scott, I just looked this up for fun. Do you know, at least according to this source, which state has number one quality roads?
Oh, I'm going to take a shot at it, but I'm going to say it's in the South because roads in the North have to deal with thermal temperature changes and de-icing chemicals. So if you're in Chicago, you're like, oh my God, why aren't these roads like Texas, or why aren't these roads like Florida? It's because the thermal change in weather. So
not a fair fight.
Not a fair fight because they're not dealing with the winters and the salt and the destruction. So I'm going to guess it's a southern state or maybe a coastal state, but it's probably Florida or Texas. I don't know.
Tennessee.
Yeah. Wow. Because they don't have any roads.
yeah, I guess there's a lot of variables here, but Tennessee, and it actually goes Wyoming.
Why is that? I'm from Wyoming, so I know.
Yeah.
Why is that in Wyoming?
I need to look into it a little more. It says, it has a rating here. Here, I'll share my screen. So for Tennessee, it says 24 in best states overall, 16 in infrastructure, and 16 in transportation. The quality of a state's road can affect it.
This is interesting to me. So I didn't know this. So Wyoming, Dakotas, Oklahoma are where there's big oil and gas. And they have huge revenues. They all pass laws. Wyoming is one of the highest paid education programs in the country.
Wow.
Because there's these states, the legislators said, hey, look, we're not going to just let the coal and the oil and the gas leave the state. It needs to be taxed, and that money needs to stay here. So if you look at Wyoming, I think it's got 500,000 people with 400,000 square miles. There's almost no roads, but a lot of revenue. Dakota's the same. Oklahoma the same. Big revenues from oil and gas and not a lot of roads. So
I didn't know that.
So like Wyoming, was like the school district that I was in was like, geez, my chemistry professor or my chemistry teacher in Wyoming was like a PhD from Purdue, and he was my high school chemistry teacher. It was like the highest pay you could get was just go to Wyoming high school.
That's wild.
It was
wow.
There's so much money.
You've got Florida at number 16, then Colorado at 31, Texas 32.
Wow, that's funny. Texas. I drive Texas. Roads are pretty good. I wonder if it's the rural areas that take Texas down.
Probably.
The urban areas are amazing.
But that's interesting to see.
But that is interesting. I didn't know this. So as you show this, it kind of speaks to the money available to take care of roads is what this speaks to.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Who's at the bottom? Does it say?
Economy, number 12. Wow, this is interesting. So the bottom, let's see.
It's probably an eastern town that is tax burdened.
Rhode Island.
Yeah, eastern. Old infrastructure. Hawaii, why would that be?
Probably, that's an interesting, like transporting certain materials that they may not have access to.
Oh, yep. They don't have the resource. They don't have the resources, the asphalt, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Pretty pricey. Interesting. Yeah. So many variables, I guess, when you talk about these things, right, that affect our decision making.
And that's just roads. I mean,
roads.
We could keep talking about, I could do a bunch more research, but there's roads. Then there's, we could talk about bridges. We could talk about buildings. We can talk about
drainage.
Many layers of infrastructure. It's kind of overwhelming. The more I'm it's like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. That's kind of what I'm going through right now. Every time we have these conversations, I'm like, my mind is opened up to all the little intricacies that I pay for as a taxpayer and that I don't even think about, but I use them.
Right. Well, hopefully, folks find this interesting and they listen to it. Hopefully we're making it fun for them to hear and inquire. And
And I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, why is all this relevant? If you're an engineer, architect, like the more we have these conversations, the more I realize we're going to need more people and minds on this. Like I really feel like, you tell me if you agree, there's going to be, obviously there's a lot of things changing with AI, with just new technologies and advancements in the economy and in the way we work, that a lot of people have retreated from engineering because, the pay isn't enough. You go to all this school and you're actually it's not that great of a career. At least the traditional way is kind of getting
It's a great career, but that financial reward is low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can't help but think there's going to be this reversal of trending where, oh shit, we need these people so much now because they've all retreated. We need to pay them a lot more and take care of them because our country's falling apart. Basically.
Yeah. We're at a net loss for civil engineering in this country. So every year that goes by now, we have less civil engineers, and that's our infrastructure, and then our buildings too. Structurals falls under civil. So our buildings and all of our basic government services rely on civil talent, and we're at a net loss every year. And I think you're right. I mean, of course, that's what our Level brand that funds this podcast is about, is creating a more interesting and thriving work environment so we can attract engineers in the United States. So big, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Yep.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Well, thank you again, Scott.
You're welcome.
I'm going to chew on a lot of this until we talk next.
Sounds good. Enjoy California, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you found value in this episode, support us by sharing it with someone or leaving a review. In upcoming episodes, we'll discuss the realities of the industry today and what the future may look like. It's our belief that positive changes for architects and engineers is not the obligation of the industry, but rather a choice you make to reimagine how we work together. We invite you to join us in creating a world in which design professionals thrive. Learn about our mission and get involved by following us wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribing to our newsletter at leveldesignpartners.com.